Hello, chat room. We're kicking it off. We're getting it going in 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to The Starting Zone, a podcast about World of Warcraft and the people who play it. And now, here are your hosts.
Well, hello and welcome to The Starting Zone, the podcast about World of Warcraft and people who play it. Today is March 16th, 2025, and my name is Spencer Downey. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing to our show. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Jason Lucas. Jason, how are you doing on this fine Sunday?
Oh, Spencer, good morning to you. It is Sunday morning. It is 3/16 day, so we're going to crack open a couple Steve Weisers and talk some WoW.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know if we're going to do... I don't know. Can you get... Steve Weisers don't actually exist, okay? Don't worry. Yeah, it's Sunday morning, and Gallywix is dead. So
It's true.
we are now in the post race to world first. Congrats to Liquid for the late night
shortly
kill
by Echo. Echo killed it in 50 pulls, so yes, it was right behind them. Yep.
I feel like I don't have stats in front of me, but I feel like it was one of the shorter races, just an overall time that we've had lately. And people may grouse about that, but I think it's a good thing.
I actually don't know if it was. I mean, it certainly was one of the shorter races coming out of, like, if you compare it to like Shadowlands or something. But I don't think it was a super short race. I think it was probably the fewest pull last boss we've seen since Emerald Nightmare or something like that. I can't remember how many Xavius was back in the day, pulls wise to kill, but I feel like it was that like this rivals or competes with that for final boss pulls.
Yeah, somebody in Guild last night. I didn't do the math, but somebody was saying that like total Liquid had about slightly more than 500 pulls across the whole Mythic raid instance to World First. So I mean, geez, there've been bosses that were like 400 plus pulls. So
the jailer, yes,
yeah, like I mean, there were some weird like speed. Yeah, there were some weird speed bump bosses in this raid, like in the middle, that took like more pulls than maybe even Blizzard intended there to be. But
yeah,
overall, like, we've talked on the show over the years about like Mythic raids getting too hard. It's discouraging people from doing it. If the best guilds in the world can't do this in under 400 pulls, like how's anybody supposed to do it ever? So I don't know. To me, I look at this and go, oh, well, that's good. And this probably means that now we can expect some more aggressive tuning on stuff and, just really open the raid up. Like if it sort of feels like once a raid opens, there's this sort of period of holding your breath until the race sort of concludes. And then Blizzard starts really tinkering with, boss tuning for the mortals and class tuning and stuff like that. So, hopefully we'll see that coming through in the next few weeks here.
We need to find a better term for it than mortals, because it really is like people who essentially work a 70-hour work week playing World of Warcraft versus people who don't.
Right? Yeah.
And have a team of analysts sitting behind them at a desk, like,
and software developers.
Yeah, that are literally coming up to them and going, okay, we need you to change these 3 aspects about what you're doing because we've noticed this in your gameplay. Like that, like the level of coaching that happens is pretty extreme in a lot of these situations too. So
yeah, it's really not comparable to like the live game, home game experience. It's just not. It's not the same thing. It once upon a time, it pretty much was, right, but not anymore. Not since it became a live stream event and like an esports sponsored kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an exhibition. It's like stunt work, and it doesn't really reflect like what we're playing.
Yeah, so I'm with you. I like when the race ends, because then we see a lot of changes come through. Typically, Blizz doesn't like to change things during the race. I kind of wish they would change a lot of things during the race. I think it would actually make the race more interesting to watch people pivot. The reason why they don't is because they recognize that these teams do a ridiculous amount of splits to gear very particular characters with particular gears so that they can actually accomplish the things they accomplish. Like I was telling Jason, I think Liquid's average item level was like 664 or something like that when they killed this boss, which is around where you probably would want it to be for when you're facing this boss. So it doesn't surprise me too much that they ended up knocking Gallywix down. I very much remember my, race date, not world race days, but my days where I was pushing Mythic that hard and them being obviously Shadowlands. And as I mentioned, like Jailer, Anduin, Halakon, like these were all 400 plus pull bosses or close to it, or like 300 plus or 280 plus pull bosses. Like I think overall that raid was like in the thousands of pulls for that entire raid for some teams, and it's obnoxious to recognize that that's the case. I mean, I think ours was probably close to 1,200 or 1,500 or something pulls to clear that instance, and I think that's just you never need that, right? So I'm glad we've shifted away from that. I think this is a good direction, and as I said, hey, look, if this just means that they have to do less splits so that the race is more entertaining for folks, because no one enjoys watching teams just do splits over and over and over again, then great. You know, maybe they do less splits. Maybe there's like an agreement that happens of like them going, hey, that our time is better spent just doing the mythic content than it is doing splits to try and get gear, because, you know, we have the item level we need to be able to clear this content. Who knows? So I'll have to see what happens in the future, but I'm not upset about this. I do find it weird the bosses 4 and 7 were substantially more difficult if you count pulls than the final boss. But I don't know if that means that 4 and 7 should have been nerfed more, or the final boss should have been buffed. You know, it's one of those like half a dozen here. You know, like you don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with they should have been nerfed more. I think that's a safe policy, a like blanket policy for WoW rating until we get to a point where like maybe we hit some kind of point that too many people are complaining about how easy rating is. Like, you know what I mean? Like once the pendulum gets all the way to the other side, then then maybe we can err on the side of making bosses harder.
That's fair. That's fair.
You know, I think it's been one way for so long, and they have been, you know, it's been coming back. So I think it's good. It gives, you know, it gives teams some hope that maybe they can get farther into an instance, or they can get a CE kill without wanting to, you know, pull their hair out or like disassociate themselves from whoever they're playing with or whatever,
give
right?
Up
or
real
like,
life opportunities to see other people. Yeah,
stuff like that. Or like teams break up because they brick wall on bosses, and then people got to find new teams, and then you're looking for a new team 3 times in one tier or whatever. Like a lot of that has to do with the raw difficulty of some of this stuff. So, you know, if they can dial it back a bit and still make it fun, then I think it's a huge win for the players.
Yeah. Yep, I don't disagree with that at all. All right. This past week, though, before we hop into what's going on next week in World of Warcraft, next week being Tuesday in World of Warcraft, this past week in WoW, I have run more Mythic Plus keys than I have run in an extremely long time. I think I've run 30 or over 30 keys in this past week because I needed to catch up from the week before because I was non-existent, as people know, in the week before. So this past week has been like, I need to cap on crests. I need to get a bunch of gear. I've run more Cinder Brew meteries than I'd like to say, trying to get a neck or a trinket, and have not gotten them and seen them. Well, I've never seen the trinket, but I've seen the neck a few times that other people have gotten. So that is, I think I ran 12 Cinder Brew meteries yesterday, and those were the ones that were successful, and not the ones that collapsed partway through, because there's a bunch of lag issues that have been going on with DDoS attacks on Blizz stuff. So that's messed up some people's timing and keys and things like that before. So we had a bit of that going on, as well as people just getting very discouraged in the first room when it's not pulled very well, and then a bunch of deaths start happening, and then people are like, screw this, and they leave. And I find there's 2 instances that are like that so far. One is Cinder Brew Meadery, the other one is Priory. Both of those involve very large pulls up front that people use heroism on, or bloodlust, whatever you want to call it. And that in both situations, if there's a lot of deaths, someone just like gives up and walks out in those situations, because I'm pugging all these keys, right? So it's like someone just gives up and walks out, and that's just kind of the end of the key if there's too many deaths in those initial pulls. So it's kind of weird that they both have that same thing of people are like, yeah, I like to pull 2 or 3 packs at the same time in this room that's a dangerous room to pull things in because there's patrols that wander around in it. And then, hey, stuff went wrong. Oh no. There's a whole bunch of uninterruptibles where people are throwing chairs at people that do like 6 million damage when they hit them. That is Cinder Brew Meadery. So you just sort of have to like roll damage reduction abilities through that entire pull while trying to kill everything to make it happen. But yeah, it's been a bit of an experience this week in keys. I'm now capped on all my crests. I still don't have all the gear I need. I still need a neck and trinkets. And so I'm still farming those out. I have gotten, I did not manage to get, I did LFR. I did not manage to get any tier from my LFR run. Although I saw 3 tokens drop and didn't get any of them, which made me very sad because it meant that I couldn't get my 4 set this week. And I'm currently playing Dev Evoker, and Dev Evoker, there's a 100,000 damage or DPS difference between going from like reduction, going from 4-piece from last tier to 2-piece from this tier. So you can't put on your 2-piece because you lose 100,000 damage. So you need to wait till you get your 4-piece to put on your gear to be able to actually have that, difference be there. So even though I have heroic pieces that would replace like 626 pieces, I can't actually swap pieces out because the item level jump is not enough to compensate for the tier set situation. So it's a pain in the ass. Pardon me. It's a pain to sort of go through, and I'm disappointed that that I'm in that situation. But it is what it is. So yeah. I have 2 tier pieces that are just sitting in my vault that I could choose between gloves and shoulders, and I have 2 catalyst charges, and I can basically just go, all right, let's see what happens in the beginning of raid, and I'll see if I can get a 4-piece going by the time we hit mythic this week. So that's the plan at the moment.
Oh, true. I keep forgetting that you guys raid like super late in the week now.
Yeah, Sunday, Monday. Yeah, we're at
like,
Sunday,
man,
Monday.
you still get your vault chilling like it's Sunday.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, hey, at least the good thing, like, it does suck to be in that situation, like, because it's tough. You're getting these item level upgrades, you can't use them because you don't want to break set. But like, completing your 4 set used to be sort of a project for the entire raid tier, right? Like, you did that like at the end sometimes if you did it at all, and now it's like, well, between Catalyst and how flexible loot is, like, you can usually get it within a couple weeks, at least get some kind of workable 4-piece.
Yeah. So I know next week, because we get a charge next week, I think, on Catalyst. So I think next week for sure I should be able to put something together if I don't put it together this week, but I'll be shocked if I don't put it together this week. I think we're planning on doing a full normal clear with a full heroic clear with going into doing first 2 mythic or something like that this week is sort of the plan. And then we'll probably phase out normal next week. The only reason why we're doing normal this week is because I think we have 14 4 sets inside of our team now. 14 people have their 4 sets now. So I think we're at the point where it's like we didn't get any of our healers their 4 set. One of our healers got their 4 set in the situation I described, where we did LFR. They got a piece from that. They had a piece in their vault, and they used the 2 catalyst charges, and they put together a 4 set. So there's those situations, but I know that there's other healers who still need it. So I think we're going back into normal to try and get the best shot at getting that, as well as a couple of specific trinkets. House of Cards just being
there's some real good trinkets in there, right?
Yeah. So that's something you need to do. So we'll probably do normal again this week. We'll go into heroic. We'll clear through heroic, and then we'll get. I think we got a mythic boss last week, but we'll get a couple mythic bosses this week. I think between Sunday and Monday. So see what happens with that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and hey, we're only a couple weeks away from unlocking the raid skip, which will just be like once you get to, I think, Renown 5 in the raid. If you've killed Muggsy on a difficulty, then you can just skip. So
yeah,
that'll be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, really busy week for me as well. I still have 1 raid night to go. We're raiding tonight, but picked it up Tuesday, just blasted normal out. I mean, I don't know if we one-shot everything, because there's some mechanics like, oh, I missed the trash ball or whatever, and then you just die. Or the bomb with the trash ball, I should actually articulate. But still, we got through. It was well under 2 hours. We had time to go in on, get everybody out, reset to heroic, and kill first 2 bosses. So that was great because it gave us plenty of time for Wednesday. We went in and re-cleared Rick. I missed last Sunday's raid. I was busy. I had like a standing thing going on that night, which sucked to miss the first, a night the first week. But I mean, hey, real life comes first, So it was my first look at heroic Rick in terms of a kill. I had pulled it a couple times the first week, but so that was good. We obviously had some big upgrades since the first week, so the ads were dying, and we got through Rick pretty quickly. Sticks, they had done with a much smaller group, like 23, and I had a full 30. So Sticks took us most of the night, I would say. We wiped on it quite a few times, but we got it down, and I think, that's a fight that requires a lot of environmental awareness from everybody, because you don't know who's going to get picked for the trash ball, and then you got to know how many bombs are up and where they are, and then you got to know when you can, detonate them in terms of how much trash you have, and you got to be conscientious about, you want to pick up a bunch of trash, but you don't want to pick up too much trash because you want everybody to get a big trash ball, and so there's a bit of a technique, a bit of finesse involved on that boss, which I think people just had to learn. So that was fine. We had some time to look at Lock and Stock, and it was going okay. It's obviously a pretty intense boss, and I feel like it ramps up a bit from the ones we've done so far, but it was feeling pretty good. I think it's probably doable tonight. We'll pick it up there, and I might have to cut the group down just because it's a fight where the room doesn't get bigger. I say it all the time, right? But the conveyor belts and all that stuff, it's all the same size if you have 20 people or 30 people. So, and I do have, I tend to have a pretty open attendance policy, but I don't necessarily have 30 people that are like ready and geared up and have the kind of skill level for heroic prog. I just don't. So sometimes those people need to just dip out after we get them some kills in for the week. It is what it is. They'll get their AOTC, they'll get all their stuff, but prog is a different. I have to do kind of a different sort of setup to kill bosses sometimes, so might be necessary here. But overall, I mean, I think the raid is a real nice re-clear. Like on normal, it's, I mean, dude, from a raid leader perspective, it's so much friendlier than even Palace. I don't have to do these like really specific split odd even groups and give people real specific assignments and stuff. It's just kind of like, all right, be aware of the mechanics. So
yeah, I think
that's nice.
The clashing robots is really the only place where you might have to split your group in the entire place, really.
Yeah. It's like that, and like you need the split for galley, but just people need to know, like, okay, which cone am I supposed to soak, basically.
And it's not just that, like, you only need to split for galley for part of the fight, and the rest of the fight you're fine. Like it's not,
used to by party or whatever. It doesn't need to be that specific. Which is good, because I really don't like playing raid group, party Tetris. And especially like having to change it between bosses or whatever. It wasn't that bad in Palace, but that's always my least favorite thing. So I'm having fun in the raid so far. I think it's a nice run. I could do without some of the trash that gets like scattered and people run into by accident. Then they're trying to catch up with the group, and then everything gets bugged out. I don't know, but people will learn or not. In terms of Mythic Plus, I've also done a ton of Mythic Plus this week, and I'm probably not done yet. I think I've done about 19 this week, which is too many, frankly, but whatever. It's early days of the season. I hit Keystone Hero last night, which is unprecedented for me to be 2,500 and not even 2 full resets. I got most of the portals unlocked at this point. We did Darkflame, Cleft, Meadery, Rookery, and Priory last night. And earlier in the week, I had done Workshop, although I already had a Workshop port from previous seasons. But still, I mean, it's still an achievement or a feat of strength or whatever for this season. So I got a couple more to do. But I mean, keys with like the crew that I usually push with are feeling really good. And I haven't really gotten overly much power yet. I do have Heroic 2-piece. I've gone up about 10, 11 item levels. I'm still using quite a bit of Season 1 stuff, but my Season 1 stuff was also all pretty maxed out. So, I mean, keys are feeling good. We're still learning kind of the routes and like how to react to certain things. But, I mean, geez, the tuning is a completely different universe, even from, Season 1, especially early Season 1. There are definitely dungeons that feel harder. I mean, Priory is one you mentioned, and I definitely that one requires a lot of technique and a lot of throughput. Floodgate still feels pretty hard, even though the targeted nerfs were good. But
I gotta hop in. Priory, are you a left route or a right route person?
I've only done left route, but mostly like I've asked the team, like especially like a couple people who run a lot more keys than I do, like, hey, there's like a left right thing. Like there was a thing on Wowhead about, if you go right, this happens, and the response was like, no, don't ever go right. It's the worst thing. Don't ever do it.
So yeah, I was in a bunch of Priories, and last night I ran to the first group that went, You okay if we go right? Like, I really like the right route. And someone else was like, yeah, right route's so much better than left. And I was like, I don't know. I've never tried it. Sure, let's see what this is. That was a group that did not complete the key.
Curious.
Literally, we went right route, and right route, you run into a mini boss that has an ability that launches sort of like orbs into the air that when they land, they leave a circle underneath people's feet. And if you are not literally all clumped together, moving as a group all of the time to do this, you just fill the area really, really fast. And then the mini boss resets because the mini boss can only be pulled so far from where it starts. So literally you run out of space and you're just backing up with the mini boss. The mini boss just resets and goes back. And it's like, okay, this is horrendous. So yes, it was not.
Yeah, that's not good.
It was not a good experience.
When you're fighting first boss, then you have the companion that does like the fire circles all over the ground, which can then overlap with the lynx mauling. And you can't move when you're being mauled by a lynx. And then if there's fire on you, now you're getting mauled by a lynx and blown up by fire.
Yes.
So I'm okay with I think left is probably, I think the knock on left is it's like more punishing on tanks, but I got buttons, we'll figure it out.
Well, and you don't have to deal with, I don't think the left route has to deal with the hunters that put down traps either. Is the other thing.
No, there are. Yeah, there's a few of them, but it's doable. It's you just got to watch your feet, which is, there's stuff everywhere is the problem.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That one, it feels a little bit harder, but once you get the hang of it, I think it's okay. Floodgate is still sort of a mystery to me, but we're working on it. I think the targeted nerfs helped a lot, but overall, I think keys feel really great. I'm super thrilled to be 2,500 plus after 2 weeks. Have most of ports done. I want to go to 3K, and I think it's going to be possible without having to really do anything weird, which is fun, and then people can keep going. I'm not going for the title or anything. I just want what the game is willing to give me, and so make that doable for somebody who plays the way I do, right? And so crests are all capped because that many keys ends up being a ton of crests with the new crest economy that we got mid-season 1. Yeah. And then it all kind of trickles down, and then you get the discounted buy-up going the other way. So that's really nice to move all that around. We'll talk about it, but we got an extra half spark this week, so I got both of my crafted pieces done. Like, there's an argument to be made that what I did was not correct, but it just makes me feel better. Like, I want embellishments on belt and bracers. So my first 2 sparks went to 675 belt and bracers. Right. I have my blacksmithing all maxed out to make all the armor pieces. I can make them very simply and cheaply. I don't even need like 3-star mats to upgrade them. So bam, that's 2 slots. BIS for the rest of the season. It's week 2. You could argue, well, I should have made a shield or I should have had a weapon made or something because that's going to be higher impact early in the season, and then you'll get more sparks. You can get these low impact pieces. That is probably true. I also think that considering where we're at in terms of raid prog and mythic plus prog, that I don't think it's mission critical for me to max it out that way. And it makes me feel better emotionally to have two item slots just done. I don't have to worry about them. I can trade stuff around. I can do whatever, I can pass on raid loot. It's fine. So that's really nice. And, the other thing is just delves. I've been in delves a lot. I gotta say, I love what they did with delves this season. I think delves are super fun. A huge upgrade from season 1. Just the moment-to-moment gameplay in them is way more fun. Obviously, the tuning is a lot easier, which goes a long way because you're just not in combat with one thing for as long. But there's a lot more texture, I feel like, to the delves overall. There's more stuff to do in them. I love the Nemesis Strong box because it's super lucrative. I've been getting so many tinder boxes out of delves. It's kind of silly. And so it's like when you see those underpin minions, you just dive on them, right? Like in the like rare mobs or whatever you want to call them from season 1, you want to avoid. It's like, no, don't even bother. Like if you just get through this, whatever, it's not gonna be worth it. Now it's like, well, I killed some mobs that were dangerous, and they had more health or whatever, but I killed them and then I got like 3 tinder boxes. Like, yeah, dude, that's kind of worth it. So I think also like the reworks they've done to how some of the delves are laid out feel really great. Like the candle stuff and the poison cleanse totem stuff is way less obnoxious than it was in season 1. So I don't know, just having a great time. I just like, I did all the warriors delves just to get a full hero row. And then I wasn't really going to play an alt, but I'm like, I just kind of want to play some WoW and I want to do some stuff. Hey, I had this monk sitting around. Like, why don't we get the monk going with some delves this season? So I've been doing that. Need a couple more bountifuls on the monk for the week to get full hero row, but stepping in at like 624 Shadow Pan Brewmaster, and I was just strolling through on 8s, man. I had no problem at all. So I love it. This is a lot more what I wanted out of delves in season 1, I think, and they just felt sloggy and kind of not very rewarding compared to other stuff I could be doing. This feels more like like an actual activity that I want to do, at least for now, right? Like, I'm having fun moment to moment inside the delve, and I feel like I got some bang for my buck when I come out of the delve. So yeah, I think it's just an upgrade all around.
Yeah, I will say I still don't like the map mechanic. I wish the map was either cheaper to buy the item off of the vendor than 2,000 Undercoin, because I feel like 2,000 Undercoin is expensive.
2,000's a lot, yeah.
Or that it was just a guaranteed drop out of your first Bountiful chest, which encouraged you to do another, round to get yourself another thing out of that, out of another delve basically done for the week, and then you're at your 2 delve thing.
Yeah, I don't think it would be some huge hardship or some detriment if you just fought the underpin the first one of the week. Because like, what's Undercoin even good for other than that anyway? Like cosmetics and stuff. Like, it's just supposed to be fun, but it does really behoove you to have that on their first run of the week and get your hero item right away.
I just know last week I had to run a ton of delves before I finally got the map item. Whereas this week I ran 2 and then got the map item and then defeated him and went to the end. And when I I got the map. And when I looted the chest at the end, I actually got the item that you buy for Undercoin. So now I'm set for this week, just using that to get another map. And I'm like, why did I have to run like 16 delves week 1 to try and get my map? And then this week I ran like 4 and then I'm done. And you're like, this is very weird, that kind of differentiation. And it's such a big grind difference between them that I just wish there was a better way, right?
Yeah, it should be like a guaranteed drop by your 3rd one. It should be like an increasing drop chance, because if you do 4, right, then you get 2 vault choices. Yeah. So it's like encouraging people to do 4 kind of makes sense to me, and that's where I've stopped a lot of weeks on my alts and stuff in season 1. It's like, okay, well, 2 choices is good enough.
Yeah,
I don't want to do 4 more, and I have 4 keys. So like, it's this rule of 4s around delves that would make sense. Like, if just buff the drop chance or add some streak protection guarantee where, like, by your 3rd one of the week you have 100% chance the underpin shows up. I think that'd be great, but I don't know if we really need this undercoin sync. Then I guess we need an undercoin sync. So there you go.
And I think the undercoin sync that's good is the one that lets you get 3 items that you would have gotten out of the chest at the end of a delve, so you just get crafting materials. That's a good undercoin sync. It's there already.
Yeah,
and so, like, to me that's fine. I don't need this other thing being a large sink. I think this other thing could cost 500 Undercoin and be perfectly reasonable, because people will get that in the first few delves that they run. So that's where my mind is at with that whole thing. Outside of that, man, I did raid this week. We
didn't actually talk about the new affix. We didn't actually mention that.
We can do that,
Pulsar. It was our first week looking at it, and we were like, leading up to this season on the show a lot, we talked about Oblivion stinks. We hate it. It's the worst one. Oh, they're replacing Oblivion. Oh, great. Oh, I hope this thing isn't as bad as Oblivion. I think it's pretty safe to say that Pulsar is not as bad as Oblivion.
Yeah.
In a lot of situations, you barely even notice it. Like, because you have a lot of times where you want to stack up for stuff, and then it's like, well, hey, we're all near each other's orbs, and then it's just they all pop. You get your buff, and off you go. And the only thing is, sometimes, like, we were doing that workshop. We were doing a workshop 10 that there was a portal on the line for some people, and we got orbs out in second phase when magnets are going off, and there's like the beams, and I, a couple of them got soaked because we had some melee. I was like, just don't worry about it. Like, let him get a little buff. Like, don't kill yourself trying to pop this orb, because then we'll lose it, right? Like, we could hang in there with a little buff on the boss if one or 2 of the orbs don't get soaked, but if we get out of position and kill each other with laser beams and sparks and all that crap, then there's no chance. So I feel like, sometimes you do have to make that call of like, all right, it's not worth it right now, but most of the time it just pops in a couple seconds. You don't have to drastically reposition yourself, and then, you're buffed.
It all depends. In pugs, you really run into, Like what it should be is everyone has the responsibility of making sure their orb can't get popped is what it should be in all those situations. But you do run into people who are like, no, I'm not moving. I'm standing here by myself and I'm just going to stand here. And then like eventually one person has to run way out of their way to go over and touch that person's orb because this jerk won't move, basically, right? Like, just when you get the orb, it's your responsibility to make sure your orb can get burst. It's your responsibility to help other people if you can. It's
drag
not
it through
someone's
somebody,
job.
yeah.
It's not the healer's job or someone's job to run around and do this. Just, help everyone out, get the buff up quick, and keep on rolling. Like that to me is, the new affix is much better than the old one. I don't have an issue with this one at all. I am looking forward to it not being there because I don't think it was my favorite one, but that's just because I don't think the buff is good enough. I don't think the 20% mastery with Leech is like a phenomenal buff to get for your class. So I'm looking forward to some of the other buffs, and I do think they could lean in away from mastery and haste and verse as these buffs. Verse is a little bit different because you can actually just get percentage damage increase, which is nice, but haste and mastery, I think, have pretty strong diminishing returns when it comes to how people are benefiting from it. And I would like to see something else be happening there as far as those buffs go. But I don't know. That's just me. All right. Outside of that, let's hop into what's going on this week in World of Warcraft, and we'll get that conversation started. All right, so this week is the Delves event. This means that the Sign of the Explorer buff is up, where Delver's Journey progress gains are increased by 25%, and your companion experience gains are increased by 25%, and you also get 25% more Undercoin this week. This is a good week to cash in and stock up on all of the Undercoin that you need for getting your maps quickly, if you're someone who's wanting to do that. The other thing this week is there's a quest to complete 5 Delves, which will get you your Cache of Delver's Spoils, which is a champion 636 piece, which I feel like that could have been a heroic piece for like the big weekly quest, since you just get champion for, running a delve normally. This feels kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a little underwhelming,
yeah,
I guess, but hey, whatever. It's an extra piece of loot.
It is.
5 is awkward.
Yeah.
Because everything is, you
get your
4. Yep. Yeah, you get your 4 delves in and you get 2 vault choices, and then, I gotta do one more. Oh, well, I guess maybe I should do a couple more. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, hey, Delver's Journey and brand experience increases this early in the season is great.
Yeah.
They have adjusted Brand's sort of XP curve, I think, because he's leveling up a lot faster. It seems.
Well, I think the early levels will go faster no matter what. I think the early
levels should go super fast. Yeah.
But
even above 60, I mean, I already got him up to like 64 or 65 or something. Like, he's leveling up faster than he was at the top end of season 1. So that's cool, and the bonus should feel really good. So yeah, more Undercoin is better. You can get more of the map generator items. I forget what they're called exactly, but
I think
a good week for it early season, because delves are relevant for way more players early season than late season, right? Like, if you're a Mythic Raider, high Keystoner, you will grow out of delves on your character. They will become not really they'll have no point in terms of powering up your character, but right now, everybody pretty much wants to be doing them because there's stuff that you want from this season, this tier of loot. So yeah, really nice to have this come in, week 3.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. We also have the Undermine weeklies that people want to be picking up. The Urge to Surge, many jobs handle it, and Reduce, Reuse, Resell. Be sure you're getting those done for the week. It's also a great way to get those keys that you use inside of delves. So not only
I just want to point out, but Urge to Surge is the one that gives the key from Undermine, and like I didn't really pay attention the first week, and I was just like, okay, I need keys, because I hadn't thought about that in months.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know what gave me keys in Undermine, and like how many keys did I get this week, and how do I get more or whatever. The Urge to Surge, which is doing surge pricing once in some way during the week, that is the one in Undermine that gives you the key. So keep that in mind. The other ones you probably want to be doing for rep and stuff, but if you're just trying to knock out, all right, need coffer keys, I think surge pricing starts every half hour or something like that.
It is. Yeah.
So, so just be aware. You go out there, like do a theater troupe and then go to Undermine, I guess. And there you go.
There's also the weekly capstone world quests that are out there. So there's the one for Tuesday, one for Friday, and each of those give keys too. So there's a couple of ways to get keys out of Undermine.
True.
That's worthwhile doing for folks that are down there.
There can be the special assignments in Undermine. Yeah. So that they behave the same way as the older ones did.
Yep.
So yeah, a couple additional options to get your 4 keys for the week, but you'll still only get 4, at least from, activity rewards.
Correct. All right. The rest of it, obviously, Call the World Soul. You want to be picking up whatever the choose one or whatever it is this week. I think this week actually is Delves week. It just syncs up with the actual weekly. So you'll be going to Bran and picking up the quest to complete 3 delves, I think it is, and then you'll be able to actually get yourself that extra reward for the week. I think this is where you get your spark fragment as part of this as well for this week. So, and a key, you get another key out of that. So be sure you're picking that up before you do your delves. But there should be dungeon quests for you to grab still there that you can do. So be sure you're getting your dungeon quests as well for whatever that ends up being as well for the extra reputation.
One thing they did this week with the dungeon quest, and I don't know if this was intentional or what, but like it just gave all the reps.
Yeah.
It used to be you do the dungeon quest and you pick the rep you wanted.
Yeah.
And this time I turned it in and there was nothing to pick. And then I had all this blue text in my chat log and I was like, well, I guess we just get all the reps now. So that's cool.
Yeah, I was pretty pleased with that.
Yeah, it's nice. And don't forget, like, if you get one of the the dungeons that isn't in the seasonal pool for the quest, I would say just do it on follower.
Oh yeah,
banging out in a couple minutes, whatever. The Delves weekly quest, we've seen a lot of variety on those, so we'll see what it ends up being. Sometimes it's like do any 3, sometimes it's like do 2 of them in a particular zone. I wonder if, since this is the first time we're seeing this for this season, it's going to be like do each of the new ones this season, something like that, So we don't know exactly what the quest is going to be, but Bran will tell you what delves he wants you to do, and I'm sure it will also not nicely sync up with doing 3 or 4 or 5 delves or whatever, right? Like, there's all these different, like if you're doing 11s for gildeds, then you just do 3, and then you don't get any more gildeds. So then there's the Vault Rose, there's the delves event, there's the Bran quest. Like, I don't know. We're going to be delving this week. I can tell you that much.
PvP Brawl this week is South Shore versus Terran Mill. This is the 40-on-40 death match that you can queue for, and was around from the 10-year anniversary event for WoW. They threw this in there as a brawl way back in the day, and it literally is just a death match. Great way to get yourself some honorable kills. Great way to earn some honor. Just some silliness that's out there, and feel free to Dragon's Breath over a large army of Horde or Alliance, whatever one you're up against, and have your Death Knights be yanking people in, and it's quite the battle that can take place. So enjoy that if that's something you're queuing for this week. Obviously, there's a quest for winning one for something different quest, which gets you some Marks of Honor, Conquest, and Honor. So that's a little reward for you out of that. The Gobfather. Oh, you want to talk about that at all, Jason? Are you good?
I was going to say, no technique, head empty, just HKs. That's all. Don't get too far out. Bring some Death Knights, grip some people in farther than they want to be.
Yeah.
I just like every time this comes back around, I'm like, man, I can't believe this started for WoW's 10th anniversary, which is now like going to be almost. It's like 10 and a half years ago.
Yes.
Like it's been it's been as long as it was from launch to this coming in for the 10th as it is.
I know.
It's really weird to think about.
It's very wild. The Godfather is the world boss that's up down in Undermine. So if you're someone who wants to get yourself some Warbound loot, it's Warbound loot on the first kill of the week, and you don't get any loot after that. So once you've gotten that first kill in, you're good. And it drops plate chest and feet, mail legs and feet, leather chest and waist, cloth legs and feet, and a crit verse neck. That crit verse neck has eluded me. I would not be running all these Cinderbrew meteries if I'd managed to get that crit verse neck. But yeah, that is the situation. This week was weird. This week, after reset, there was no quest for killing the world boss, but you could kill the world boss and get loot. And then the quest for the world boss kicked in like 4 hours later. It was a bit strange as far as what was going on there, but that all got resolved. Needless to say, the world boss is up every week, and you can go and kill the world boss every week.
I had a minute there, like shortly after reset, and I'm like, there's no world quest there. And then I go up and I'm like, well, the boss is there.
Yeah.
But there's nobody here, and like there's no groups for it, so I'm not gonna solo this thing. So I just waited, and then eventually the world quest did get pushed.
With its billion health.
Yeah, I do really like what they did with the loot on this. I think it's a lot better. And I
I
mean,
agree.
it's debatable, I guess, but like you get a piece from the world boss every week and you have to kill it once. Maybe it's not a piece you have any use for, but you could just as easily have killed the old world boss every week and
Got
never gotten
nothing.
anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this is just so much better. And you know what? If maybe you go, oh, you know what? Hey, a piece of mail. Well, I got that shaman kicking around that I haven't played. Like maybe I should level it up. Like I don't think that's a terrible thing either. Like just maybe encouraging people to try different play styles or whatever. But
Yeah.
I'd rather have something guaranteed for 1 kill a week than like fishing for nothing on multiple tunes over and over again. It's not like a world boss is fun to do really in its own right. So why
Yeah.
not?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I also like the item level, I like the 642 item level. I think it's a good place above Delve's normal end of dungeon reward. And it's just, I don't know, it's a good place so that, yeah, if you do have a new character you're leveling up who hits max level, this is like a really poignant piece you can give to that character, which is great. And in a lot of cases, it's something that you'd be able to catalyze if you were looking for it. So you could have ults that essentially get to max level, and they're catalyzing their chest or their legs in the situation so that they have one piece of their tier right away that's like a nice higher item level piece for them. So I don't know. I think it's in a good spot. I like the concept so far. Okay, Mythic Plus affixes. We got Voidbound this week, which means the emissary is going to spawn in and buff all the enemies around it. Basically, is sort of the concept of what this will eventually do if you don't take care of it. This is the one that spawns in and has the shield, and basically you have to DPS this thing down before it reduces the damage that enemies around it takes, and you'll get yourself a nice big versatility and cooldown reduction buff for 30 seconds. As a Devastation Evoker currently, I'm very excited about this because I do extra damage to shielded things. So I just basically beat up shielded things all of the time. So that to me will be very attractive for keys this week. So I'm looking forward to it. This is a good buff.
Yeah, this is our first look at kind of the reworked Voidbound, right? Because what Voidbound used to do would be it would spawn and then it would start channeling on everything around it, and it would start like ramping up this absorb shield on them. What it does now is it starts like a 15-second cast, and then the buff is related to how much health it has remaining when the cast finishes. So if you kill it, then it's dead and the cast doesn't finish. So it should be, I think it should be better. Like it should be pretty similar overall. Like you handle it the same way. The thing spawns and you kill it. The nice thing is it's not stacking this damage absorption and everything around it. That was kind of punishing early in season 1, where it would pop at a bad time with like ads on a boss, or like the boss already has some kind of shield you got to break or something. And it's like, well, what do I attack now? And I'm not doing enough damage to anything to trivialize this. And then by the end of the season, it was just, you just pop the thing in a couple globals and you move on with your life. So I think it's a better place to start it. It just gives you more options. Like if you have to kill an ad or something, or you have to break a boss shield out, you could do that. And then maybe they just get smaller shields because you didn't quite kill the emissary in time. Like, I feel like that's better than we're on last boss of Miss Eternicythe and we can't break the boss's shield and we're just dying to consumption. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah,
but we'll see. I think in practice for seasoned players from season 1, I don't think it's really going to feel any different.
the places where I noticed it the most last season was when our tank would be the only one left alive and could not kill this ad before it got the 90% damage reduction on the thing that they were fighting, which meant that you just had this really awkward thing of how long can they live with this damage reduction that's making the thing that they're fighting die a lot slower. It was that was very awkward. So I don't know. I'll be curious to see how this all plays out this week, but I'm looking forward to it. At 7 we get Tyrannical, so we're back on Tyrannical week. So Trash will go faster and will be less punishing, which means maybe those pulls that I was talking about at the start of Priory and start of Cinderbrew Meadery will be much easier for folks this week. It should be much easier for folks this week, unless you're doing 10s where Fortified kicks back in. But it does mean that the bosses are going to last a lot longer and be more difficult and more punishing. So just be aware of that. As far as the micro holidays go, we got Un'Goro Madness kicking off on the 17th, which is tomorrow for this, and it's going to run for a couple of days. So if you want to go visit some dinos out there in Un'Goro Crater, feel free, and you can get the adaptations. Remember when there's the Hearthstone crossover happening with adaptations, where adaptations were a big thing, which I actually really loved as a mechanic for Hearthstone. They will have those as things you can play around with and be silly with inside Ungrow Crater if you want to. No tangible rewards, as in like rewards that last beyond the silliness of being there for Ungrow Crater, but maybe there's going to be stuff inside of the Adventurer's Journal for you to get some points for the week if you need some more currency. Or at the mid-month point, maybe this is a good thing to pay attention to, and maybe you have to adapt 2 times or something. I haven't looked at the actual log for that, but maybe there's some currency you can get from that'll help out with those sorts of things.
Yeah, they usually include that in the journal somewhere, but this is really fun, except this is really also bad timing.
Yes.
You're going to be doing delves this week. You're not going to be hanging out in Ungrow Crater because you have nothing else to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing... micro holidays can be awesome when they come in sort of the doldrums, but when they come out when stuff's brand new,
that would be an amazing crossover if they literally were like, hey, because Ungrow Crater is happening this week with Ungrow Madness, during the days that Ungrow Madness is happening, you can get 1 adaptation for your delves. So you go in and adapt your character once inside of a delve. There's just like a dino chilling at the front end of a delve that you talk to. And he gives you an adaptation, and you just get to run the delve with an adaptation. Like, I would be down for them doing crossovers like that.
Well, maybe, who knows? Maybe someday we'll get delves in, like, old zones. What if there was a delve in Un'Goro? And then, we could go do that or something. Like, or maybe someday they add, like, legacy content, holiday type content like this to zones that have delves in them. Like when the War Within is 15 years old, then maybe there's a holiday around it or something. So
yeah, I don't know.
That could be cool too. But
I was just picturing like there'd be colognes you'd wear during Love Is in the Air inside delves that did stuff, and there'd be like, I don't know, there's just a lot of things you can do where with micro holidays where while they're happening, you could be having it affect other things in the world and be silly and fun and be a way for people to like, oh man, I was totally able to do this crazy thing in delves this week during this one particular window of time while this broken thing was happening, right?
I think delves would be a good way to do it. I don't think it would really hurt anything.
Exactly.
You're not at the absolute top end of gearing and power. So
yeah.
But yeah, Un'Goro's fun. I just can't see anybody like, I don't know. Nobody that I play with, we're not going to be doing this, even though it is cool. Like, I love Un'Goro Crater. It's one of the coolest zones ever in the game. And just like the rampaging dinosaurs, and you're just getting all these weird kind of, dino themed powers. And like, it's all like, it's super fun to do, but why do it? Like, there's just other things that need my attention this week.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Trial of Style is also happening this week. It's going to kick off on the 20th and go till the 27th. So if you're someone who wants to hop in there with 5 other players, it's 6-player total, and compete in a transmog contest, feel free to. That is absolutely something you can do. And you can win the opportunity to get these tokens, and the tokens you can change in for specific transmogs for this holiday. So enjoy Trial of Style. I mean, it's always fun whenever it comes around, and if you can queue for it, go ahead and queue for it, right?
Yeah, it's super fun. Free transmog also for while the event's running, which is hugely important.
You can transmog your gear for free.
Yeah, like at the beginning of the season, man, when we're getting all new pieces and stuff, those transmog bills add up. So
they do.
You take advantage of that. I love Trial of Style, but this does fall into kind of the same category of like, when am I and the people that I play with, like, when are we going to do this week?
Right.
They have added a ton of stuff to the vendor over the years. Like, I was looking at it last night, and I mean, there's so much stuff you can buy from the currency from Trial. They haven't added full new sets in a long time, but they've added, they added some weapons and stuff, like stuff that goes in your hands. They added some all kinds of different boots, and they added some of the stuff that we traditionally see on the trading post now. Like there's a Trial of Style specific color scheme for like the long gloves and like the shoulder cape things. So that's all on there, which is cool. And I mean, I think that vendor's available all the time. It's just you can only get the currency during Trial, and Trial is only 2 weeks a year. So keep it in mind. I mean, it's a fun thing to do, like if you're, waiting for people to log on for keys or whatever, because you can queue for it. There's a transmog NPC in Dornogal, so You don't need to go anywhere, right? It's not like you need to go back to Ungoro Crater to do this. So you just queue into it. It only takes a few minutes to do the scenario. So, you could do these while you're waiting on stuff to happen for the night or whatever. And yeah, there's so much stuff to buy from it. Once upon a time, it was like, oh, I have everything from Trial of Style. I don't ever need to do this. But now I don't think any of it is as appealing as the full Mog set. I love collecting full Mog sets. I don't know. It's just it's a cool thing to me.
I like that there's a sets tab and I can fill things out in the sets tab. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. But so they haven't added sets in years, but there's still plenty of stuff to collect from it. So give it it is super fun to do, especially if you do it with like a full group and you're in voice and like people are really seriously trying to meet the theme. It can be really funny.
Yeah. Okay, hot fixes for the week. Man, there's a laundry list, but none of it is massively impactful, I would say, as far as a lot of things go. There's some things we'll highlight here that are impactful, so be sure that you hear those. Those who were missing their High Explorer title, it was not being rewarded properly for doing delves that are tier 11 or higher inside of Season 2, or just tier 11 is the highest inside Season 2, so that's now happening, in case you were worried about that. They did do some fixes for a lot of classes where unintended reactions were happening or not happening, like two pieces not triggering properly, and I know Preservation Evoker, their Dream Projection wasn't benefiting from mastery as far as Lifebinder goes. That just wasn't working. Assassination Rogues, there was an issue where Caustic Splatter just was not splashing to intended targets near the rogue, and when striking very large enemies, it just wasn't triggering at all. So they're just like, there was some weird stuff like that happening, so they just sort of worked their way through a lot of classes and fixed a lot of that stuff. So you don't have to worry about that as much anymore. Elemental Shamans, they fixed a bug that briefly caused a power loss for all damage spells. I just want to say, Elemental Shamans having a blackout just to me is kind of hilarious. They just had power loss. Sorry, it is what it is. I thought that was very amusing.
I think the line's repaired in a few hours.
Exactly. We'll be back online
actually, but yeah.
So they're back up and running again. Delve wise, there was some pretty substantial brand changes. So from what I was hearing last week, people in my guild who are running tank brand could essentially AFK and Brand would just clear the dungeon for them, clear the delve for them. Like, he was so strong that they would just they'd put on tank Brand, they'd go in as a healer, and they'd just walk behind Brand, and Brand would just clear everything in front of them, and they'd have nothing, they didn't have to do damage. They just occasionally healed Brand, but nothing major, and it would just sort of clear its way through the place. So there was this big shift that happened where they basically nerfed that version of Brand into the ground and nerfed a bunch of other things about it, and then they reverted. They flip-flopped, basically. They overcorrected and went, okay, let's go back a bit. So they then backed that off a whole bunch inside another way. So what the developer note here is, over the first few days of Season 2, Brand's tank specialization has become the best choice for completing delves by a lot. While we're excited to support a true healing-focused playstyle in delves for players who prefer that gameplay, we must address the situation where healer plus tank Brand was too effective compared to every other combination of player role and Brand specialization. Our goal is for Brand specs to be roughly balanced around each other, and the difficulty of delves to offer a satisfying progression, whatever a player's playstyle is. So they went through and they changed a lot. I'm not going to go through all the Brand changes that happened, because there was just a lot of things that they tweaked one way and then backed off a bunch as far as those balancing goes. But yeah, easy to say. If you were playing early in the week last week versus late in the week last week versus, this upcoming week, Brand feels different the whole way around. So they're still settling where he's supposed to be as far as that goes.
Yeah, this is pretty controversial when it came in initially. I think it makes sense. Tank Brand should be for healers, in my opinion, and I think that's kind of the way that they sold it. But then in practice, there were not many reasons not to use tank Brand. I guess I didn't even bother. I didn't use tank Brand,
yeah.
But I only play. It doesn't make any sense. I want the dispels and all that. So I didn't even know about it really. I had heard some rumblings about it, but I didn't experience it, and I didn't really talk to anybody who was doing it. And then my rogue buddy was doing some delves after the changes, and he was like, "Dude, what am I supposed to do?" And I'm like, were you using tank? He's like, yeah, I was. He's just getting wrecked now. Like, I can't do this. And I'm like, well, you should just use healer probably.
Yeah.
You just have to face tank stuff, but like heal Bran is pretty decent, so
Yeah.
you'll probably be okay. And he was like, oh, I'm getting trucked. I can't do. And then after a few minutes, he's like, oh no, actually this is fine. I just have to be a little bit careful. And I'm like, yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's early days. Like, you need gear. Bran's got to level
Yeah.
up. He's got to get his curios, you know. And then we got some more changes on Friday. He messaged me back later in the week. I think it was on Friday. He was like, did they change Bran? Because he feels a lot better now in heal spec than he did. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, nothing's been published. But then Friday night, the blog came out with some of the nerf reversions and bug fixes and other tuning and stuff. And I was like, hey, yeah, you were right. They did actually, like, pretty palpably change him, I guess. Like, it must be. Like, there's an example of somebody kind of on either side of it experiencing it and letting me know, like, okay. I mean, I'm only doing 8s and I'm just cruising. I'm barely paying attention to what's happening. You know what I mean? But it's a tank privilege. Like, tanks just get to do delves for free. So yeah, I don't know. I can understand why if you were like crushing 11s because Bran was just doing them for you, and they're like, it stinks that it doesn't work like that anymore. Like, that you'd be upset about that, but I don't think it's really the gameplay they want in the mode.
No, it's
I get that tank Bran should be for healers. Like, that just makes sense to me. You should be healing Bran and being rewarded for keeping him alive.
I would almost feel like it would be smart for them to include some sort of, when you heal Bran does AoE damage around Bran kind of situation. So it encourages you to be constantly healing Bran. I think would have been a neat mechanic for them to include. And maybe there's a curio out there that does something similar to that, but that would be a neat thing to me, because then you just encourage people to do healing throughput into Bran, and then that causes Bran to like do more damage and be more explosive.
Yeah, I think he does get some kind of stacking buff or something when you cast direct heals on him.
Yeah.
When he's in tank spec, I don't know because I don't have any direct healing spells, so I cannot heal tank Bran.
Right.
It's not a thing I can do, but like, I believe that is sort of how the overall loop with using tank Bran into delve is supposed to work. Is like, he rounds stuff up, you heal him, you keep him alive. He does better the more you heal him. Like, and that just makes sense, right? So I don't know. It's always controversial when something comes out super powerful and then they move it back. And we definitely saw that. Like, we saw in season 1 early delves, like after the first couple days, they were like, oh, what did we do? We have to make delves way harder. And they didn't have to make delves way harder, actually, but they did, and it felt like garbage. And then they dialed it back to the point where it didn't feel like garbage, but it never really got fun. Right. Luckily, they avoided that pitfall, but tank Bran's a different story. I would just say, like, if you are not a healer, probably do not use tank Bran, and make sure you have a good curio loadout for your playstyle. Bran's new curios are like mega powerful. The one that's like, what's it called? The pacifist rig or something, where randomly you get the mech suit dropped on you and it just like blasts AoE flamethrower and missiles at stuff. Like, that's a utility curio. That's not even a damage curio for Bran.
Yeah.
But all it does is just do massive damage. So, you know, check out some different curio combos if you're having trouble in there, but you probably don't want to be using tank Bran unless you're planning to cast direct heals on him.
Yeah. I think that is the design intention for sure. As far as raid goes, in Mythic difficulty, they nerfed Rick Reverb, Styx, Bunk Junker, Sprocketmonger, Lockenstock. All their health got reduced. Sprocketmonger by 5%, but the others by 10%, as well as some of the ads inside some of those fights also getting reduced. So yeah, it's that they Mythic difficulty, they're doing some tuning changes, that's for sure. That's happening there. As far as One-Armed Bandit goes, several creatures in the Galagio have been conscripted into Gallios' security detail, allowing them to detect stealth and invisibility, because they don't want people skipping trash, is what they're going for here. And then they resolved an issue in Mythic difficulty where players could remove an additional application of the Up the Ante unintentionally. So they made sure to fix that one as well. So yeah, and then in Mugsy, obviously second to last boss, the base health of enemies reduced by 10%, with a increasing health scaling factor in Raid Finder, Normal, and Heroic difficulties. So the dev note on this is, we've noticed that smaller raid sizes are struggling more than intended with this encounter. These health changes aim to make the encounter more viable to smaller raid sizes while maintaining the difficulty of the near maximum raid sizes. So this is basically just a 10% reduced health scaling wise that they've added in, based off your group size. So keep that in mind. This boss will be easier for your 12 mans and 11 mans that were in there trying to kill stuff. The Chrome King Gallywix, they resolved an issue where casting Shadow Step during Gallywix encounter could potentially lead the player's premature demise. Yeah, falling into the hole in the middle of the room by accident or falling off the platform, not fun. So, yep, fix that one.
That's a classic vintage issue with Shadow Step,
Yes, it
right?
is.
Like anytime the boss like just isn't on a flat floor that you can walk it around on, like the first couple weeks if you Shadow Step to it, you're probably just gonna fall in a pit and die.
Yeah. They also resolved an issue where some class spells like Unholy Aura could fail to strike Chrome King Gallywix, so that's also been resolved. In Cinderbrew Meadery, as we lean over into the Mythic Plus world, they address an issue with IPAs causing brew drops to spawn with energy and enraging quicker than expected. Yeah, this I noticed. I was running Meadery early in the week, and then I was running Meadery on like Thursday or Friday this week. It might have been probably was Friday this week. And it was a dramatic difference. We literally had the brew drops dropping at 80% energy. Like they were so close to enraging, and then they enraged like really quick. And we were like trying to figure out like, okay, is this like a mechanic that we haven't understood yet? Like what's happening here? So we were doing things like if you let them enrage and then you kill them, then they'll respawn with 0 energy. So then we were like intentionally letting the drops enrage so that we could kill them, so that they would then have 0 energy, because otherwise, when they respawn, they just respawn with wherever their energy was, which means they sometimes respawn enraged, which was way scarier than getting them all low and then letting them enrage and killing them.
Dude,
so like
that is so terrible.
Yeah,
I'm so glad the fight isn't supposed to work like that. Yeah. Like the brew drops are pretty much the whole fight in that boss, really.
Yeah,
like I mean, there's some other stuff that happens, but the main thing is killing the brew drops, keeping them dead, keeping the boss away from them, or keeping them away from the boss, however you're doing it. So that seems I did not encounter this. I didn't do Meadery when this bug was active. That sounds really horrible. I'm glad they fixed that.
It was just they threw all of us. All of us were like, I don't remember it doing this before. Okay, well maybe this is a mechanic. Okay, well maybe we should learn how this works so that we figured it out. But yeah, that was an experience. And then they also reduced Bank Busby's aerial denial damage by 33%, which I will say could still get, like, I noticed this, because it used to be if you did not have a damage reduction ability rolling during Busby's Honey Marinade and you're on like a 9 or a 10, it would literally wipe your group. There was no, like, it would just kill everyone in your group. So you had to have something rolling to, like, consistently live through the area damage that's happening. So, yeah, I did notice this reduction. I still think this fight is a little high on damage, just in general. I still think this dungeon, and like overall, Cinderbrew Meadery, even the first boss where he throws beer at someone and puts a 5-second debuff on them, that debuff ticks for like almost 3 million damage. Like it ticks really hard. So like there's a few things where you're like, okay, like they need to tweak a lot of these things down, because not everyone has 10 million hit points yet. Like, let's just be clear. The people running like 6s probably aren't geared in heroic item level loot. Like, that's not where they're at. They're trying to get the base tier, like the end of dungeon reward for doing that is a rank 1 hero piece. So people who are doing 6s are trying to get hero gear, which means you shouldn't assume their stamina pools can support that, because they aren't there yet. So I feel like there's still some tweaks that can happen to Cinderbrew Meadery as far as the damage intake goes from some of the debuffs and stuff that are in there. Motherload. The Azerok adds Azerite Aftershock initial damage reduced, as well as the periodic damage was also reduced. So that should feel better inside Motherload.
Hugely noticeable.
Yeah.
Jeez. These things, that it still hurts, but it doesn't hurt like it used to. That, I guess it's like a bleed. I don't know what it's classified as, but it functions like a bleed basically. And reducing that by 43% was definitely noticeable. That was and probably necessary. It's not really the point of the fight is like don't bleed to death, right? Like it's something you have to manage, but there's other stuff you need to be doing too. So I was really glad when that came in, because I was doing that pre-nerf and going, this seems like it hurts a lot worse than it strictly needs to.
As far as Rookery goes, the Voidstone monstrosity add Voidstone Awakened Corruption Overload has been increased damage inflicted per stack by up to 50%. Yeah, I mean, this boss I did a lot this week, so I ran a lot of rookeries trying to get a trinket and a staff, and I finally got the staff. Yay! So I have that, which is the reason why I haven't crafted a mythic weapon yet, because I've been holding off with those sparks to see what comes out of heroic, because if I happen to get best in slots, then it's only a minor upgrade to craft the mythic staff. So anyways, whole thing. But yes, I ran a lot of rookeries. This last boss, I think, could do the one change I would make to this boss is the damage that the debuff that goes out does could be reduced, because both that when it sends out two debuffs at the same time, unless you're a priest healer, you cannot dispel both of them, which means one target needs to be focus healed. But the way you do this fight is by splitting your group across the platform in a big U, which means nothing's ever close to your healer, and it's likely that someone who is far away from your healer and not in range gets this debuff on them, and so you dispel the other person first, and then that person's just kind of on their own and will die to that debuff unless they happen to come back close enough to the healer to get like focus healed. So I do feel like that could be backed off a little bit, because it is definitely a bit punishing, and I can picture on higher keys, like if you're doing 12s or above, that like that debuff must rock people's health pools. So I do feel like that could be a tweak that could happen here with this one. Okay. Operation.
You have fun out there, preservation evokers on the last boss.
Oh my god, yeah, this is terrible.
Enjoy your 25-yard range.
Yeah, Operation Floodgate. The Big Mama maximum distortion cast time was increased to 4 seconds from 3. They also reduced the duration to 12 seconds from 14. And Swamp Face chain targeting updates to prefer non-healers. This is fresh, okay, because it means you're gonna get locked to the tank more likely than not. And it's an interesting change, because as a healer, you'd be like, yes, this is great. This means that I can essentially just try and heal the fools that are running around getting yoinked everywhere trying to dodge puddles during the massive AoE phase where I have to do that and not have to worry about getting yoinked around by my partner. But it also means someone gets locked to the tank, which no one ever wants to get chained to a tank. It's not fun at all. Tanks like to just stand in things because they can live through it, and if you need to try and dodge things, then you'll be in panic mode while they do that. So it's an interesting experience to be locked to the tank. I've had it happen before, but we'll see how this goes. That's how it's going to work now. So yeah,
I did this post hotfix, and I was like, wow, I'm really getting chained a lot. I never really used to get chained. I wonder what the story with that is. And then this hotfix blog came out. It's okay. I think it's probably better. I mean, yeah, it depends. Like if you're doing the dungeon with me, like I'm going to move out of the frontal and I'm going to try to reposition around the splash things. And so you should never be like more than 14 yards away from the boss anyway. So that's, then the healer can just kind of position where they need to go and do their healing. And so that's probably good. But yeah, if you are tethered to a tank who's not respecting, like especially the bubble splash explosion things, I don't know what they're called, but like if they're just like eating those and getting pushed, you get pushed around from that and everything. Like, yeah, you got to avoid those things. That's sort of the whole point of you being chained together and then repositioned. But yeah, like overall, it's fine. It's just a boss where everybody has to be comfortable with being in a tight stack right under the boss and just shifting position every few seconds, just little shift to the left, little shift to the left, just keep doing it. So that's, I don't know. It seemed fine, but I think I've only done it once at this point since the hotfix came in.
Yeah. Okay. As far as items go, one of the things we want to mention is that the bind on equip items, right? So you may have noticed that your mythic BOEs aren't BOEs, right? So here's the I'm going to read the post. Epic bind on equip items from Liberation of Undermine raid that were mistakenly converted to bind on pickup and became soulbound have been reverted to bind on equip. Mythic raid BOEs will continue to drop as bind on pickup and matching the looter specialization for the early weeks of the season, but will no longer be tradable even after meeting the existing item level requirements that would allow items to be traded in other circumstances. So in other words, when you loot a BOE, it's yours. It doesn't matter if it's a lower item level than what you're currently wearing. You can't trade it. It is bound to your character. So I'm kind of curious why they aren't just calling mythic BOEs Warbound Mythics or something. I'm kind of like, I feel like that would be a better solution to this. So you're just giving your alts Warbound Mythics or something like that. If that is a BOE farm, I don't know. It's a weird thing to me, but yeah, it basically there are no BOEs inside Mythic. You loot a bind on pickup item, and that is now your item.
Yeah, I mean, they say, you know, like we know they're going to change this at some point. They just say the early weeks of the season. It's a little weird. I guess they're trying to. I don't know. I don't know what they're trying to do. Protect the power curve or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
know.
maybe now that the race is over effectively, they open this back, because I guess like there is a lot of, but you only get BOEs from the named mobs, right? But all you have to really do is kill the first boss, and you can probably kill like a whole bunch of named mobs in the instance.
Yep.
So I guess like what they were doing is preventing racers from pooling together a ton of gold and just buying, every available mythic BOE on the auction house. Like, I guess. But then, if you sell a mythic BOE, like, isn't that the whole point? You want to cash in? I don't know. It seems weird. There's been a weird tug of war around raid BOEs for a long time in a lot of different ways. It's cool that we finally have a system where it's like, okay, these mobs will drop them. And I mean, we got a bunch of them this week from 2 difficulties so far. Like, I don't know how much trash we're going to be killing tonight that drops them, but we got like 5 of them or something from normal. Yeah. Like, so they talked about doing that at the beginning of Dragonflight, I think, and it just never really came in. So it's cool to have like more consistent sources of BOEs, but doing this weird dance of like, well, they're BOEs up until Mythic, and then they're actually like BOP for a while until we change them back, but they'll match your loot spec, so you won't get something that you can't use, but you won't be able to trade or sell it. You won't even be able to trade to somebody else in your raid. Like,
yeah,
okay, we're protecting the player base from something here. Clearly, I'm not sure that it's really worth it overall, but I don't design the game; I just play it.
Yeah. And then, yeah, we already mentioned the brand changes that kicked in, so we'll include the second blog post that happened 2 days ago about, the increases that happen where Tank Brand now receives more healing and when he's using a shotgun and that kind of stuff. So like we'll include that other post in here, but I'm not going to dig into the difference between those 2 posts because they literally overcorrected one way and then backed off the other is all they ended up doing. All right, as far as sparks go, there was an exploit. I'm just going to say it's an exploit because it was an exploit early in the week. And earlier in the week, it allowed players to be able to essentially get an additional spark. And they do this through means, and I'm not going to say the exact means, they do this through means where what they were doing was clearly not intentional. So in other words, this was one of those exploits where like you had to do a sequence of events that were very irregular and very weird and would result in something that had nothing to do with the events you were doing. It's not like you were like, yeah, I'm going to like turn in this quest and then, oh, hey, look, the quest repopped again. I guess I'll just accept that quest again. It wasn't that sort of situation. It was one that involved a lot of like relogging and swapping characters and doing something later in the week versus earlier in the week and how that interaction worked and happened. And so like it was very clear it was not an intended thing where folks were getting an extra spark fragment for the week, which let them essentially be able to craft a staff or something like that this week if they want to, a 2-handed weapon. And so Blizz obviously is reacting to that in that they are giving everyone access to that additional spark. Now, you might say, doesn't that mean that those people also get access to this additional spark? I'm not sure how the quest system worked with that, where they were getting the additional spark and now they get another additional one. I don't know if they would, or whether their plan is just to ban or punish or remove all those people who essentially exploited the system in a very clear exploited way. And broke TOS in doing so. So I'm not sure which of those 2 is going to be the result, but I do know that if you have not checked your Spark Guy, go and check the Spark Guy again this week to get your additional Spark fragment, because you can, craft another item like Jason did, where he crafted 2 items this week. That's a thing.
Yeah, you should probably be doing that, or crafting a 2-hander or something, right? Yeah, when I heard about this going on, I'm like, oh, well, everybody who did this is just going to catch bans. Like they're going to ban for this, and they'll ban until like the next spark comes out or whatever. And instead, they just said, "Oh, you know what? What if everybody just got another spark fragment this week?" And that's like kind of the difference between old Team 2 and Team 2 today. I feel like I feel like this was a great thing to do. It's super fun to have 2 crafted items right now, and I don't know, does it like massively throw off my motivation to play the game this season? Like, it doesn't. It's better for me to just have it now, and then I enjoyed using it this weekend than waiting until Tuesday to get the, like, it's so arbitrary anyway. And like, no matter what they do, there's going to be drop off in terms of participation as the season goes on. So
yeah,
I think it's good to just have people in the game and enjoying it, like, while they're playing. Like, why wait until people start disengaging with the game to, you know, do stuff like this? Like the dungeon tuning, for example, you know, like we saw the massive, like, especially floodgate tuning and stuff like the first week. And that's when you want to do it, when people are still in there. You don't wait until, you know, halfway through when people are disenfranchised because you took too long to fix stuff. Just make the game more fun. People are going to fall off no matter what, right? So you might as well at least provide that value to them while they're playing it. I feel like I was shocked at this, but happy about it. Like, this is a great way to do that, you know. And now I have my 2 embellishments at 675. So hooray!
Yeah. Okay, so we got a closer look at how housing is going to work, and this is a pretty cool blog post. And I love that they included video examples in this. So if you haven't checked this out, obviously in the show notes we'll have the link to this, so you can go and check out this the little like 20-second videos they did for each of these different features that they highlighted. But this one was focused on design, interior design of houses, and basically wanted to give a look at what some of these systems would look like. Now, I've played a lot of builders as far as interior design and stuff like that goes, building games. And obviously, most recent ones sort of being Enshrouded was one of the really recent ones that came out. But I play a lot of Conan Exiles. I do roleplay stuff in Conan Exiles for a lot of different the roleplay server stuff that happens there. So I do a lot of building and decorating and constructing in that. And there's a lot of different systems that different games use. I did Atlas for a while as well. It has its own building and decorating stuff. It's kind of an older one. And I know a new Dune game's coming out that has some of this stuff too. So there's a lot that they could pull on from systems to sort of see how they wanted their version to work for decorating housing. And I think the important thing to me is that it's something that is very flexible for players and very intuitive for players, and essentially doesn't become kind of a pain. And so there's a few key points I want to highlight about how they did this decorating. So in their decorating currently, you can choose from a inventory of items that you want to have inside of your home, and you'd pull in items from that inventory. And those can be tables, chairs, beds, nightstands, pictures, carpets, like a huge variety. Anything you think you could hang, weapons, fireplaces, like all sorts of stuff you can sort of pull in for your inventory and put down. And you can take these items and you can either move them closer or farther from other objects. You can raise them up and down. You can pivot them in place. You can have them clip through walls. So if there's something like you want to make it look like someone threw a sword and embedded itself in a wall, you could technically do that. If that's something you wanted to do, there's like, you could put a table. So a table is smashed up against a wall and is kind of, you know, like crammed inside of the wall. You could have that going on. Or like some sort of bad arcane experiment happened inside of your home and things all phased into each other. And so there's like, you know, a couch with a fireplace coming out of the couch, and now they're kind of merged into one. You could technically do that if you wanted to. So there's a lot of flexibility in that. You can work off of a grid or not off of a grid, which I also think is really important because a lot of people like things to be really symmetrical. And so you can have that kind of snappability where items will move into a place and you can see that everything's all lined up and square in the way it needs to be. But more importantly, it's not always locked to a grid. And this is something you see in some games where typically you have one or the other. As soon as you can unlock that to go, hey, I want it to be in the middle of the space, but I want it to be at like a 15-degree angle. So let me just unsnap it from the grid now and just rotate it a little bit and then place it. That is wonderful. And so that is absolutely a feature that's in this, where you can pivot stuff based off of those sort of snap points, or you can pivot stuff based off of just the freedom to do so. Speaking of snap points, it also allows you to take decor items like books and mugs and food and whatever it is and put it onto another surface. And when you move that surface around, the objects will stay with that surface that they've been snapped to. And that's another big one, because you can picture in a lot of these games where when you go to move a table, you move the table and then everything that was snapped to the table just floats in the air where it used to be, right? Because it's remembered a specific location where it was placed, and it was placed on that table when that table was there. But now that you've moved the table, those items are just floating. So fortunately, you can have stuff where stuff will move with it. So you can decorate a whole piece, add a bunch of stuff to it, and then move that piece around and place it where you want to place it. So that just being a really nice feature about this whole thing as well, that you aren't losing all of the decor and items you put on it. They'll let you just float stuff too. There's no like actual gravity restriction that's involved in this. You can have stuff just floating in the air if you wanted to. If you wanted to have, an entire tea set up with chairs around it and everything that's floating 5 feet off the ground inside of your home, you could do that. That could be part of your magical whimsy of whatever you want to do. Like, that's not a problem at all. So that's entirely an option as well. There's just a lot of flexibility and freedom. All in all, it is massively more than I anticipated us getting access to. I very much expected this to be a pretty, I don't know, I guess I would say weak system when it comes to the initial version of housing that we're getting, but it seems like they're really throwing everything at this to be an amazing system. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention that's actually a really, really big deal in a lot of these games that not every game gives you access to, and often you have to use mods to sort of get access to it, is scaling. You can scale items up and down in size. So you're someone who plays a human, and you're going to have a gnome and a tauren come and visit you in your home, but they only have default chair sizes. So how does this work, right? Does the gnome sit with their legs dangling off the ground and the tauren can't really sit down because they destroy the chair? No, you can take the chair and scale it up so it actually fits a tauren, and you can take a chair and scale it down so it actually fits a gnome, and you can do that. So scaling's another really big feature that they've added in for being able to size things up and down. I think is crucially important. It also allows you to do ridiculous things where, like, there's that painting or that piece of art or that mug or that item, whatever it is, that arcane item that you just love and think is hilarious, but you think would work way better as like a lamp than as like a little thing that sits on your desk, like a paperweight, right? And so you basically go, yeah, I'm going to scale this thing up huge, and now I have this giant kind of, cool item inside of my home that can be like a centerpiece, as opposed to being something that is, tiny and small and like a desk weight or whatever it is, right? Like that's an option you have to do too. So no, I think they're really on the right track. I'm curious as to where the sort of designing is coming from, as far as like whether this is tools that the developers currently have access to, or it's more simplified tools that developers have access to, what other games they're pulling their information from as far as what they want to have in this, or, what their ideas are from that. I will say there's also like a top-down layout view of your home. And from the looks of that space, because you can like place walls and stuff, it's a pretty big space. The one that they show in their example is that essentially like they have 6 rooms that are inside of their home, and they're all large enough rooms that a character could walk around and do things inside of that space. So it's a pretty big space that you're choosing to decorate and take part in. So you can have like a little tavern. You can have like your own bar space inside of your house if you wanted to, where people can come and hang out. So yeah, I'm excited about this. I think they're on the right track. I want to see where they go with it in the future. But yeah, I have lots of opinions about decorating and building, and I love doing it. And this is one of those things that went from being one of those features where I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this will be fun for like a day every now and then to sort of tweak or like throw something new on my wall, to like, I could lose myself in a week or two designing something really cool, and then like a holiday will come around and I'll want to do a holiday theme. And so I'll be suddenly redecorating my whole space to have like a holiday theme space for what I want to do, and like could really dig into that and have some fun just living in that aspect of the game.
Yeah, this is so far beyond the bounds of like, oh, you can, if you do this achievement, then this thing displays in this space in the game world, or like, oh, you can like pick a couple different buildings in your garrison and you can like pick different locations where they go. It seems extremely robust, and it seems like, obviously there are players who've been waiting for this feature for literally the entire lifespan of the game. I feel like they have things lined up for it to be worth the wait. You know, I
Yeah.
think they learned a lot of lessons from other games in various spaces, from going from Animal Crossing to Final Fantasy 14 and, you know, everything in between, and really bringing in a super robust feature. I mean, a couple other things in the post. I want to. One of the coolest things in the video is where they have a bunch of stuff tethered to a table. Like there's props on a table, and then they scale the whole thing up and down in terms of size. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Just being able to rotate stuff and whatever. There's like basic mode, so stuff won't clip through, and like, you know, if all you want to do is just put stuff in there and be done with it, like you don't have to get to this really granular level. You could just display stuff that you think is cool and then go do your thing. If you want, it seems like you can go as deep as you want to go with. You could set up walls in the interior, and then, you know, like just carve out different rooms in the space and then decorate them all differently, and then have all this stuff happening, or like create weird props that are sort of unintentional because you're scaling something down and using it in an unintended way, or you're scaling something up and clipping it through something else or whatever.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You know, if you really want to get into it, it seems like the tools are going to be very robust. A couple things also I wanted to mention. They show that you can dye stuff different colors. So like there's a section in the video where there's like a bed prop and a rug prop, and they're different colors. And the bed has all these different hooks on it for things that could be different colors. And so the person using it like makes the bed all these different color, like the different parts of the bed, different colors. And it makes the bed spread this like green that doesn't match the rug on the ground. And then they click the rug on the ground, and then they're dyeing it. And then it pops up like with the color they just dyed the bedspread with is like right at the top of the list for stuff and it just matches the dye perfectly. That rules. And of course your mind starts racing immediately. Like, oh, well, can we have like dyeable armor and dyeable this, that, and the other thing? And like, not yet. And it's not going to be everything, because it'll only be new assets that work with the dye technology, but like it exists, which means they can apply it in other places. So that's really cool. A couple other notes that they threw in there, like, they don't really talk about exterior and neighborhoods in this post. This is just about like putting props inside, but they do say the outside of your house doesn't have to match the inside, and you can have a house that looks small on the outside but is large on the inside, or vice versa. So it just depends on what aesthetic you want. It doesn't have anything to do with the functionality. And they also say you're not locked into any kind of decor in terms of like, oh, if you want like a blood elf looking thing here, it locks you into other blood elf looking things. You can mix and match whatever you want inside the space.
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible. I mean, obviously a lot of players are going to want to make spaces that reflect all the different things they like about their characters and their account. So it just seems like they're making a lot of smart choices. You know, there's so much flexibility in this system, and I think that's what players want the most. You know, you don't want some token of like, oh, I did stuff in the game, so there's like a graphical representation of it. You want it to feel like something you can actually have some control over. You want to be able to customize it however you want to. I think that's the number one, you know, desire. That's the want from players, is that customization. And it seems like they're delivering that in ways I didn't even consider would be possible with this. So it's cool, man. I mean, I appreciate the fact of giving us a really early look at it, and they've been upfront about like all the stuff is subject to change. None of this is final, but this is what we're working on. This is the direction we're going.
Yeah.
That has been dangerous at points in time in WoW's history, when they kind of pulled the curtain back a little too far, and then people sort of lost it when stuff didn't ship the way it was originally showed off. But I feel like they really can't afford to miss with this feature. Like, so many people have wanted it for so long that they need to deliver on it. And I think they need to have that dialogue with players, and they need to, it needs to land, right? And if that means that stuff they have to shift stuff around, or stuff has to ship later or whatever, like if something's really important to players, they can't just leave it out because they couldn't fit it into the schedule. I mean, I know it's not the same thing, but I can't help but think about Garrisons and Warlords of Draenor. Warlords was a beta period where they were doing what I was talking about. They pulled the curtain back super far. They're like, you're going to be able to put your garrison in any zone in Draenor, and you're going to have all these different options, and it's going to do this, that, and the other thing. Of course, our plans are subject to change, but you know, you'll be able to do that. And then you couldn't do that, and that's not how any of it worked, right? And people were mad about that, which I don't think was totally fair, but the developers have to be careful about how they handle those conversations, because anything that appears on the website or in blue text is going to be taken as a promise, no matter how many disclaimers you put on it.
Yeah.
It's a promise, right? You promised that I would be able to put my garrison in next to the Temple of Karabor or whatever. No, it didn't work out that way. This is similar, but like they have to deliver on this, right? Like this is going to be a thing that's going to be in the game forever. It's going to get better. It's all, as such, right? It'll be in the game. It'll be iterated on. They'll add new assets. They'll add new features. But after 21 years, you have to hit this square. And I think that means you do have to have a dialogue with players, and you have to give players what they want out of it. Because this has no bearing on combat gameplay, end game PvE, PvP, power acquisition. This is just like a system for players to express themselves with. And if you don't have a dialogue and you don't meet players' expectations, then I couldn't imagine, like at this stage of WoW's life, like a bigger bummer for players than if Housing came out and wasn't good, right? Like,
Sure.
For as long as people have waited for it, and as much as it means to a segment of the player base, like it just needs to be awesome.
Yeah. So I want to cover something here, because I know your armor dying comment that you made, because I think it's important for players to recognize that if they were going to start incorporating a system like this for armor, it is a complete change into how they've been doing armor up to this point, and would be a massive change to the game. Because what they'd essentially need to start doing is all the armor that had different color variations became blank sets of armor. And the color variations you have would be paint colors that you're unlocking for completing certain activities in the game, which means it's a massive system overhaul that would have to take place. And from an RP perspective, it would also be very weird to be like, you have access to these dyes, but not those ones, because you haven't done this specific thing yet. So you can't make this purple, but you can make this other thing purple because you did that over there. So like it starts to get really weird as far as that concept goes. So there's a lot they'd have to solve and figure out when it came to adding dyeable armors to the game. It's a lot easier with housing stuff because we see it everywhere. You go to an inn, there might be green blankets on a bed in that one. There might be red inside a different inn. There might be purple over in that one. Like it sort of seems very accessible, whereas the armor stuff, you don't see that as often. So it's one of those cases to me of that system overhaul for armor. I don't think anyone should be like, we're going to get this in the next 3 years. It's like, no, I think we're a ways out on that kind of system overhaul happening.
Well, it also, I think they should do it at some point, but I think you can kind of see like from this, okay, so it wouldn't be legacy sets, right? It would only be stuff that was new and designed specifically to work with it. And you kind of see like maybe with trading post stuff, right? Like the trading post stuff is one thing that gets 13, 14, 15 different color variants. So like you could kind of see that maybe that would work together. But yeah, I would think it would come in, it would only be new assets. And then it would probably be, you would unlock dyes by doing stuff in the game or whatever. That could be kind of cool. But, and yeah, when it comes to dyeing props in your house, I'm sure we're going to be able to unlock all kinds of old assets that remind you of, BFA or whatever. And they won't work with dyeing, but there is new stuff that's being designed specifically for housing that will work with it. So not everything's going to work, and probably there's stuff that's just never going to work. Like, I don't think they'll go back and update the legacy stuff. I don't think that's even worth it. But having stuff like, I think especially having stuff like, throw rugs and bedspreads and curtains that are designed for your house. Like they don't, that there's things you would put in your house, and then being able to match up all the colors of them and change them on the fly. That's really cool. So there's a lot of applications for that going forward. But yeah, like you got to think it would be tethered specifically to new assets that are designed to work with it, right? Whether it's environmental or character or anything. Because yeah, going back and updating old stuff is that. I don't think that's very productive, Like,
I'm with you.
We want new like high poly stuff anyway. Give us some nice looking new stuff.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like it's one of those things, sort of like Dynamic Flight, where there's going to be people who want access to that old thing. They want their Phoenix mount to essentially be something they can use Dynamic Flight with and have that with. It'd be a similar thing of like, I want my tier 3 or my tier 4 to be something that I can dye and color and screw around with and change in different colors. And it'd be like, sorry, you can only make that red if you were a gladiator in 2011 for you to be able to actually do. Like, I don't like, that'd be really weird things where there's paint colors that you can never unlock because you never unlocked that tier set color back when it was something else, right? Like just it's a strange it's a strange system to sort of incorporate that way, but they need to incorporate that way. So yeah, it's
I just can't see them applying it to legacy stuff because it's so much work and it's so weird. Like I think it just makes more sense. Like here's a new thing and check out what you can do with it. Like I feel like. Plus, it starts everybody from zero, right? You know, like it doesn't matter if you played 15 years ago or not because everybody's starting with this system today. So
I get that.
It'd be awesome though. Like if you think of like, because you could still do the different colorways for the different difficulties or PvP ranks, and then you throw in like other dyes that you get from other sources or whatever, you know, that you can apply more broadly. That could be that's something for everybody, right? Because then you have that sort of prestige if you got the mythic set or you got like the gladiator set or whatever. And then maybe in a delve you find like a dye kit or whatever, and you could get some other stuff that way. That'd be really cool.
Yeah. Okay. Last but not least, an announcement happened this past week. There will be a BlizzCon in 2026. It's going to be happening September 12th and 13th. So it's Saturday and Sunday in September first, and it's, you know, right after opening week of school for a lot of people. So it's kind of awkward, but that is when they've planned it. So for those who thought BlizzCon would never return, apparently it is returning. We have no idea what this is going to look like and how it's going to work. I'll read a little chunk of this, which is we've come a long way since our first event in 2005. Over the past nearly 20 years since its inception, BlizzCon has inspired us to innovate, push the boundaries of creativity, and deliver once-in-a-lifetime moments. It's important that we put on an event worthy of our community. In 2026, alongside BlizzCon staples like the opening ceremony, in-depth panels, and the Darkmoon Faire, friendly competition, hands-on gameplay, and more, we aim to meaningfully elevate this iconic celebration to create an unforgettable experience for all those who take part. We are building this event just like we build our games, with deep commitment to our players, with respect for your connections to our universes, and as a celebration of the strength and bond formed through shared adventures. So we know just based off of that, and the fact that it's happening in Anaheim again, which means Anaheim Convention Center, so it'll be a similar space, that we're going to be looking at something that's around the 26,000 person line, I would say. That's sort of what the previous ones have sort of been, is somewhere between 20 and 28,000 people can attend it. And these are, we talk about opening ceremonies, talk about Darkmoon Faire. Darkmoon Faire has had its own floor for a little while now. Friendly competition means that we're probably going to see some esports at it. Hands-on gameplay means we have demo areas. The biggest thing that they don't mention here, which is important based off the last BlizzCon, is chairs for sitting areas for people who are currently just wandering around the convention center. That was the biggest issue with our last BlizzCon, I have to say, more than anything else.
The floor was very experiential, which was cool, unless you didn't want to be having that experience.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing that happened at the last BlizzCon is there wasn't as many esports events going on, and typically you had like, here's where Overwatch esports are happening. Here's where World of Warcraft esports are happening. Here's where StarCraft esports are happening. Here's where Hearthstone esports are happening. And they have like 300 seats in each of those areas, at least. If not more, it's probably more. It's probably more like 800 seats in each of those areas. And so at any given point, you could just walk over and sit down and watch some Hearthstone for a bit, or watch whatever you want to watch for a bit, to like take a load off and, you know, relax for a bit. And they just didn't have that at the last BlizzCon. So it meant that people were essentially walking around aimlessly, and there was a few sitting areas that would sit like 20 people here and there. And they were always full, and there was always people standing in them waiting for seats to open up. So it was like, okay, guys, let's bring some of that back of, if we're going to have esports at these sorts of things, let's have seating areas for this. If we're going to have panels, let's have seating areas for panels so that people have a place to go and sit during this event, because they want to sit and watch stuff. They don't want to walk around and watch stuff and be on their feet for 10 hours on a concrete floor in a place that's the size of several football fields. So yes, it is, that is one thing to me that if I give any feedback, that is a big thing for this 2026 that you need, is areas for people to just take a load off for a bit and watch something fun and enjoy it and see that. And I will say, take the amount that they lost as far as esports competitions that were there. Like they used to have the Hearthstone Worlds used to be there. That was a really big deal. So you're able to watch all of that, and it was really exciting. They like decoupled that a few BlizzCons ago. That was really sad. So I want to bring that back. A bunch of that stuff I want to bring back and have centered around BlizzCon. So that would be really nice. But yeah, it's something to look forward to. It's going to happen in September, which is way more awkward for me because it used to happen like right as my slow season started. So I'd be able to like at that first weekend into November was this nice weekend where I could essentially do my last set of broadcasts I need to do for work, fly down in November. We'd be there for that weekend. I wouldn't be worried about missing anything. We'd have the time change, so I get an extra hour of sleep before I flew out the next morning, which was really nice because fallback happened during that window of time for time zones. And then essentially be back into work on a much more relaxed level after that. So this being in September is like in the middle of busy period for a lot of people. Like I said, school's just starting up for a lot of folks, or their kids, one or the other, are just starting into school, and that's kicking off. So it'll be curious to see what this feels like in September for going down there and visiting. But I am looking forward to it. I plan on attending. I am chomping at the bit to get together with folks again and see what's going on with BlizzCon. So I hope that it goes, we get more information soon. It goes well, and hopefully they get tickets and passes and stuff out there early. And yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, it was kind of funny that they're like, hey, we got a big BlizzCon announcement. It's going to be 18 months from now. But I actually appreciate the super advanced notice. One of the big frustrations year in, year out was like, well, we don't know if there's going to be a BlizzCon, and we don't know like we think we know what it's going to be, but we don't. And if we assumed we knew when this one was going to be, we'd be really wrong. So it's hard to make arrangements. It was never announced far enough in advance. And so now having this much advance notice is perfect because everybody who's interested in attending can plan accordingly and plan our lives around the fact that if we're planning on attending, that then we're booked up that week, right? Like,
sure,
that's a luxury that we haven't had in ever. It's always like you maybe have 6 months at the absolute most, that that you're going or whatever. So,
well, I
was glad about that.
Yeah, I will highlight. Know that you're going is different than this. We don't have tickets yet. Tickets haven't been announced yet. We don't know when tickets are going to go on sale. If they sell tickets in like January 2026, that'll be wonderful. Because then people will know that they're going 6 months ahead of when the thing is actually happening. But if they sell tickets in like August or July of 2026, that's really hard because people will be like, hey, I want to go to this. I booked the week off work, which I can now cancel because I didn't get tickets because I didn't know. Like, so you cancel your flight and you cancel all that stuff that you'd be doing to go to BlizzCon. So it's important to me that as much as we get the announcement of when it's happening these days, hopefully they sell tickets early enough that it lets everyone have all of their plans in place. They can have their hotel, they can have their tickets sorted out for getting into the con, they can have their flights sorted out, they can have all that stuff sorted out in advance. There was one year where Jason and I literally traveled to BlizzCon without knowing if we had tickets to go to BlizzCon in October.
Yeah.
And when we arrived, when we were there, we found out that we were being given tickets. Like we had 1 year where it was that. Like it was like
right, yeah. Now in 23, they didn't sell the show out. You could get tickets at the door.
Yeah.
And the secondary market was flooded. I had an extra ticket to sell because I didn't know if we were going to get passes or whatever.
Yeah.
I didn't end up selling it. I gave it to my traveling buddy because it was an upgrade. He bought a standard ticket and I had a portal pass. So I ate like, I don't know, $600 or something on that. In fact, I think I just gave it to him. That was not a great situation, but tickets for BlizzCon were really high in 23 and they didn't sell out. And I wonder if they're going to keep them high and they just sell what they sell.
I think they'll go higher. I bet they will be more expensive than they were previously.
The more expensive they get, the more inventory there's going to be. Like
possibly,
I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think people are going to have any more money to throw around BlizzCon next year than they do right now. So like it's an expensive trip. It's an expensive event to attend for sure. But so again, like more advanced notice is better. I think like if you want to go, you'll be able to get tickets one way or the other. The secondary market is usually pretty robust regardless, but I'm weirdly like glad they're not doing one this year. I guess like I have other kind of stuff I want to get to this year and other stuff I'm planning on spending my time and money on. So not having to schedule any of that around BlizzCon or worry about like stepping off a plane and onto another one essentially with timing is nice. I think September is a little weird because like that, yeah, in my neck of the woods, that is like the week after kids go back to school. It's like the second week of school, but like I would kind of rather go in September than in November because November is just busy and there's all kinds of stuff anyway. So I kind of like that it's in September, but I did have the thought like maybe I would take the kids, right? Because they'll be almost 10 by 2026. But I'm, not the second week of school. That's not happening. So, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of a weird thing. But again, having all of the information this early is fantastic, and would be great is if, every time they run a BlizzCon from now until whenever they stop, if we got 18 months notice so that we could, plan accordingly. I didn't really, I honestly kind of thought that Microsoft was going to kill this.
A lot of people
and
do.
that we wouldn't do another one.
Yeah, a lot of people.
So
I will say on a selfish level, one of the things that I really enjoy about this being moved to September is that I don't have to hear anything about American elections while I'm traveling, because that's what always ended up happening was whenever I traveled down to a BlizzCon, there'd be this massive thing about November and what's happening with elections. I remember.
Yeah, that's true.
I remember getting a Vimo or a VRBO rental house one year, and literally the house was positioned between a Trump sign and a Hillary sign on people's front lawns, and I was like, these neighbors must be absolutely at each other's throats, and we're in the middle of it in this situation. So like I do appreciate that September will move it away from that kind of stuff, so that'll be nice on some level. But yeah,
true, yeah.
All right.
I mean, I also like, I guess for me it's also a little bit less there's like a climate disparity, right, between the Northeast and SoCal, and the disparity is less pronounced in September. It'll still be hot here.
Yeah.
I'll be going from hot to hot versus it could be really cold around here by November, and then going from cold to hot back to cold. That I never loved that about the trip. So yeah, because it takes me a while to acclimate, Okay. So it's like if I'm acclimated to the hot, then I'm hot. It's hot, whatever. Going from I'm trying to get acclimated to cold, then I'm too hot, and then I get acclimated to the hot, and then I come back to the cold. And get off that plane back in Philly, and it's like So
okay,
that will, that'll be a bit better. I don't know.
It's a nice break from the cold. We have like November for us is tail end of fall, so. I was always sad going because I miss Halloween, which is really unfortunate.
I've traveled on Halloween before, right?
Yeah,
literally on Halloween day.
That was unfortunate. Is missing that. It's really the last few days of fall here in Canada where it's really beautiful and pretty out. So and I really love the weather. So it was disappointing to leave during that window of time, but it also was one of those, if it was cold and snowing, it was nice to go someplace warm for a period of time before going back to cold and snowing. And that happened as well. So I agree with you. September is most likely going to be a very non-temperature change. Typically we still have very similar temperature to California as we head into September. So yeah, that'll be easier.
Yep.
All right. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons because they contribute a ton to the show and help us to improve on the content we create. And today I'm giving a shout out to Alianas, Arajian, Bradley, Dustin, James, Kapawi, Cobra, Max, Shorel, and Rager. Thank you so much for all that you give to the show, as well as all of our patrons past and present, giving towards the show and helping support the show. We are still sort of up and running and keeping the archives online, and the bills keep coming in. So we appreciate everyone who supports it. Newest patron in here, the Black Shanks. Thank you so much for hopping in and supporting the show as well. And yeah, if you want to hop in and support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thestartingzone and hop in there as a patron if that's something you're wanting to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, patrons, past and present. Everything you've contributed to the show over the years has kept us on track, kept the show in production, everything like that. We couldn't do without you. And, the patrons are a big reason why we make sure we get a show out every week whenever we can, however we can make it happen. So, thank you, patrons, so much for that. And who knew that the patrons would be helping us spend so much time talking about player housing in World of Warcraft this year.
I know, it's crazy, and we'll have to have our own neighborhood, a TSE neighborhood or something at some point. There'll be a bunch of stuff we'll need to do to try and have people help out and contribute with that kind of stuff, which would be very cool. Another great way to support the show is leaving us those 5-star reviews over on your iTunes, your Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that as well. If you're looking to contact the show, you can head on over to your Gmail and email us at thestartingzone@gmail.com, or reach out to us on Twitter at thestartingzone, or on Blue Sky at thestartingzone.bsky.com. Or, like I said, you can join our Discord server, thestartingzone.com/discord. Hop in there and support the show as well by asking questions and figuring stuff out and joining groups, and there's all sorts of stuff in there. And if you want to get your hands on some TSE gear, you can find that over at TeePublic. That's teepublic.com/stores/thestartingzone, and you can check out the designs on shirts and mugs and stickers and stuff over there. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more time to discuss BlizzCon stuff over the next 18 months, because I'm sure there'll be like every 5 to 6 months we'll get a teaser, and there'll be more things we can talk about and more things that can happen. So that's another big thing. The other thing I'll say is them planning this thing 18 months out means they can pretty much book most bands to play at BlizzCon if they have a particular artist they're looking for. It is much less last minute. You are booking stuff way in advance, so it's probably easier to get exactly who you want. But Jason, if folks are looking to find you on the internet, where can they find you out there on the interwebs?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky. It's at Shieldwald over there on Twitter, and it's jlucas.bsky.social over on Blue Sky. I mostly post stuff on Blue Sky, but I'll cross post or whatever. I do keep up with both sides, so come say hi if you're so inclined. You can also catch me streaming WoW on twitch.tv/Shieldwald and youtube.com/Shieldwald. Just Twitch streams for now for another week or so, because we still got drops going on. And if you're watching WoW streams, you should be getting your Clocker Spaniel. So I will be streaming tonight for Raid and every Sunday when I'm home, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays. And then sometimes I'll throw in some retro games and other stuff as well. So check out the video channels.
I just said that whole thing while I was muted, so we're gonna do that again. If you're trying to find me, you can find me on Blue Sky at spencerhd.bluesky.social, or over on Twitch at twitch.tv/spencerhd, or on youtube.com/@spencerhd. And I do still have a Twitter account over there. I just don't interact with it as much, which is at Spencer_Downey. And with that, for Jason and myself, we want to say thanks for listening, and jobs done.